It was something trivial, but some of the huge happenings that'd make a big mark on history start from things that are trivial. Jin Chul thinks that was a stupid thing to do when he hears a voice asking the association leader if he trusts him. Jin Chul turns his head, but there's nothing there. Standing there, he's suddenly overwhelmed with past memories from a different time and drops to the floor, realizing that those were memories that connected the past, present, and future. He saw himself in the forgotten world through Sung Jin Woo, along with the gates, monsters, hunters, rulers, and monarchs. He recalls his conversation with Jin, asking if he's planning on fighting the monarchs himself, and now back in the present, he asks how long Jin's been fighting against them in the dimensional crack. Jin Chul knows that based on history, he disappeared for 2 years, but that's not something that can be resolved in just 2 years. 27 years, Jin says, shocking Jin Chul. He asks if he regrets it, and Jin disaffirms, explaining that no matter how many times he has to make the decision, he will always make the same one. Detective Wu notes that Jin seems to be enjoying his life quite a bit, to which Jin affirms, except for the fact that he no longer ages and need to keep changing his identity, immortal and unaging. He's already obtained a power similar to that of a god, but despite having such a power, he chose to live as a normal human. He asks what Jin wants to do from now on, and Jin answers that he doesn't have anything planned yet. In that case, he asks Jin to come to the police force, as the vicious criminals that have been coming to the police are talking about dying and say they can't live normal lives because of the shadow monsters. Jin says that if he becomes the police, there won't be any work left for the other police to do though. But Jin Chul says that is the kind of world that he's working so hard for. Jin responds that he'll think about it, and the detective says that he'll be waiting. However, Jin tells him not to wait for him, as he knows that it's a job that involves tons of work but very little salary. And so time passed. One day in late April, that suddenly appeared. A traveler calls the emergency report center, who asks if he's in distress. He declines, and she asks what the problem is, but he disaffirms, saying he's not in trouble. He just wanted to report something he saw. He tells her that he's not sure if it's dangerous or how to explain it, prompting her to push him to do his best to explain. The traveler says that something is breaking and has a lot of cracks. She wonders if there are buildings in the desert and asks where the crack he's talking about is, to which he basically says, the sky. The sky is cracking. In the city, Igris tells his liege that he's doing question 24 wrong. However, Jin sort of dismisses it, questioning this feeling. At the Cafe Peen, the ruler's envoy greets the Shadow Monarch, but Jin just questions if it's their doing. He denies this, telling Jin that he already knows the way they move is different from the rulers. Jin asks if he has an idea who the people closing in on it are, and the envoy explains that there were some other worlders that stepped foot in their world not too long ago, and seems they changed their direction here after they got chased away by the army of the sky. Jin asks why they're trying to come to Earth, and is told that they are a giant race that needs to eat rocks of stars that living organisms can live on. In their world, they're wicked beings called Titans, so it's obvious why they're coming to Earth. This side story continues. It's affirmed that they are indeed not friends, and Jin points out that this never happened before the Cup of Reincarnation. It's affirmed and said that the time the ruler mentioned not long ago is also referring to the lost time. So enemies that should have been targeting his world have now changed their target to Earth. Jin Woo knows that he's the cause, and the envoy shares that they believe the Titans are chasing traces of the great power that Jin possesses, and the army of Sky has already departed from the rulers. Even if they were to come using the gates that connect their world and Jin's, it'd take at least a few years. By then, everything would be over. Jin says he'll do it. In the West America desert region, while the American government sealed off this area and called for all kinds of experts they could find to come, no one could give a definitive answer. The researchers say they're not sure and have studied weather anomalies for 30 years, but have never seen such a phenomenon before. The captain tells them not to worry, as if something does come out of it, the people will take care of it. Suddenly, tanks lift from the ground, along with soldiers and other vehicles, as Jin says that there's no way those kinds of weapons would work against them. And with this, the stage is set. He can feel them, the strong desires of their enemies that wish to devour this land. Jin Woo summons his daggers and tells them to come, as from this point on, the one they have to deal with would be a monarch, who is also a hunter. This side story continues. Everything crashes back down, and the captain questions what just happened and looks back to the gate while the Titan army floats down to confront Earth's champion. Their king questions why there's only one standing up to his army, but Jin asks if he look alone as his shadow aura shoots down throughout the cavern and knights rise alongside. Ice bears, high orcs, ants, nagas, giants, silver soldiers, and dragons to form Sung Jin Woo's massive shadow army. The Titan peers down as Jin invites him to get started. At the White House inside the Oval Office, the president thinks about the crack in the sky that things began coming out of, how unprecedented it was, and if it's okay to not inform the people. But before that, is it even possible for them to take care of the things that came out? The president asks Harrison if what he said is the truth, and it's affirmed as they mention the situation is already over. All the details will be explained in the meeting room. Now reviewing the footage in the meeting room, Harrison tells everyone to watch the video that the drones and robots recorded at the scene. This obviously shocks everyone, and they question who that man is and why he's standing in place of the troops, but he only says that it's something he'd wish to know as well. This side story continues. Charging up, Tusk blasts directly at the Titans, firing a line straight through their ranks. Titans and giants trade war cries before clashing, while Jin dashes forth blitzing the Titans as his ants follow. Jin Woo elegantly flies through the Titans and carves them up with ease before focusing his power on his daggers to make massive blades. He launches them forth, effectively piercing the Titan army. As they close on the king, he easily blocks it, calling them petty tricks. Before he can recover, Jin jumps above him, focusing his aura to form a massive shadow hand that he uses to slap the Titan King down with. However, as he gets back up, he applauds Jin Woo's power. However, the fact that Jin has to use mana in order to bring out the fullest extent of his power shows just how underdeveloped his race is. The Titan explains that his race need to reduce their size to fight with their full strength, which only the most elite can do, himself included. He tells Jin to beg for forgiveness, but while he's talking, Bellion's sword whips his head clean off while riding a dragon. He asks if Jin was in the midst of talking to that guy, and Jin disaffirms, pointing out that they seem pretty arrogant, so he wants Bellion to pay extra attention to them. He tells Jin to leave it to him as he blitzes through the army on foot. Back in the meeting room, Harrison nods as the president asks if they've figured out who the man is. He recognizes that Jin dealt with those monsters like they were nothing, and this is something out of the movies. He asks if no one in the intelligence agency is able to find out who it is, and a man says that realistically he thinks it's impossible. Revealed to be David Brennan, director of the American Central Intelligence Agency, he proposes investigating his identity via an unrealistic method. President questions what he means, and David points out that there is always that person who told them truths they couldn't know about with unrealistic methods. Asking if it could be, David confirms it to indeed be Norma Selder, who will tell them the answer as she's always done. At the school national track and field competition preliminaries, Jin stands with the gang and notices a guy warming up. His team member, calling him Kim Chul, asks why he's not warming up as Jin realizes that he is the reincarnated Iron. This side story continues. Red thinks that Choi Tae-woong's team must be doing pretty bad and can't believe he included a first year in all the matches. He heard Woo Sang-in rested for a few months due to injuries, but wonders if he's in such bad shape that a first year became the team's ace. Choi tells them that their jaws will probably drop when they see how good their first year is, but Red says that instead of improving his running skills, he's just gotten better at making jokes, and adds that they've also got a monstrous newbie to join the team, Impulse. An overwhelming impulse. Why is he feeling an impulse to kneel in front of a fellow student that he's never seen before and is of the same age as him? Could he be afraid? Asking Kim Chul what's wrong, he blows up saying he's fine. There's no way he'd be afraid of someone as weak-looking as him. He asks Jin what he's looking at, and if he's got something to say, they should go elsewhere. Jin Woo's team cheers him on and tells him to make sure he holds himself back, but he says that nothing will happen, and they don't need to worry. Behind some steps, Kim holds him up, asking if Jin thinks he's a joke joke just because they're both earring school track uniforms and are standing on the same track. Everyone's happy to see Iron, while Bellion says that if allowed, he'll educate him so that he'll never act like this again. Suddenly, Kim begins crying before dropping to his knees. Quivering and asking why, Jin begins walking away, knowing that since he's living as a human and not one of Jin's soldiers, there's no need for them to be too involved with each other. But telling him to wait a minute, Kim questions if this is what people call love. Jin looks back, wondering what nonsense he was going to say. Snapping his fingers, a feeling comes over Kim Chul as Jin tells him that he tried to pick a fight with him, but found out that he's the son of his father's friend's friend, and then chose to forget the negative emotions he felt towards Jin. And he'll live kindlier from now on. Walking away, he says that since he was one of the people who fought to protect this world, he should take pride in it. Kim Chul snaps out of it and looks around stupid, just as the middle school preliminaries are about to start. This side story continues. Stepping to a house, David Brennan greets a woman, and Norma Selner greets back. Walking in, David notes the smell of food and asks if she was in the middle of a meal. But actually, a guest came before he did. David says he'll get straight to the point and leave after, which prompts Norma to remind him that after that person looked for her, she was no longer able to see things. David realizes she's talking about that god of death again, and Norma smirks. Telling him that she'll answer the questions he's about to ask, she says yes to the first and no to the second. He asks how she knew what he was about to ask, and Norma answers by clarifying his question of how she knows what he is going to say, even though she can't see into the future anymore. She says that the answers that he wants from her were thought of in the past, and she simply referred to the past that she's seen and gave him an answer. Norma asks if she can continue giving him answers and affirms another question, saying she does know the identity of the person he's looking for. However, she won't tell him anything about the person. David says she must know what he's done. How could she say something so irresponsible when he's someone who could become a threat to the country, but tells him that's precisely why she won't say anything. Asking if he saw that video, David affirms. A single human stood before ferocious monsters, yet he never stood down. While that power was so strong and as fearsome, he definitely saved mankind. Selner asks if he'd believe that this wasn't the first time something like this has happened, which shocks David. He asks if she's talking about how mankind faced the fear of destruction multiple times without being aware of it. Maybe that man is like what she said. Walking out the door, he asks if she can guarantee the man who appeared in the video is not dangerous, to which she guarantees it. All right then, David says that he'll forget he ever heard her saying she knows him, but she tells him to wait as she made some cookies. Turning back and giving the kid a pat, he says he'll visit again. A man says that he doesn't like David and asks her if she wants him to teach him a lesson. She asks Thomas if he isn't one problem away from being disqualified as a fighter, but asking if he can say something else, he tells her that there are probably a lot of people who died in accidents other than him, especially in the case of traffic accidents. But he was able to survive without getting into any accident thanks to Norma's prophecy, and asks her why she saved him. She answers that he did a lot of good deeds in his previous life, and he questions this. The UFC's devil, Thomas Andre, the one that people call a demon. He asks what the guy in the video did for David Brennan to pay her a visit, and she smirks, answering that he saved the world. Thomas thinks that there are times that he can't tell if she's joking or telling the truth, and asks what the hero is doing right now. I wonder, maybe he's enjoying his youth somewhere out there. This side story continues. At the track, runners on their marks, gun fires, and they blast off. Purple and Green close in on Cha and actually pass her, but she dials in and sends for the finish. Relief sets in. Outside, Cha sits by a tree and takes her sock off, revealing a purple welt. She wonders if, although she passed the first round of the preliminaries, will she be able to run the rest of the races? She thinks it's so frustrating. When a voice asks if she's just going to run while hiding her injury, Cha looks back to meet Sung Jin Woo. She wonders who he is, as he tells her that if she runs without any regards for her injury, she'll spend a whole year just paying money for rehabilitation, and she'll become a lousy runner after that, which will make her regret the decision for the rest of her life. This is the actual story of someone he knows. She notices his scent before painingly thanking him for the concern, but he puts his hand over her foot, freaking Cha out. However, she's left in wonder as her foot is healed. Jin says it's just this once and to run without any regrets. Walking away, Cha tells him to wait up and asks if they've met before. He only responds, running, which confuses Cha. Jin then tells her that if she wins against him in a running race once, he'll answer that question. But she asks if he's in the high school team and remembers him running, catching first place in all his races. Jin suggests she's giving up, and she moves the challenge to the final results of the preliminaries that will take place. If she can break the record someday, he'll answer her. Jin thinks that she's just as pure and naive grown up or not, and agrees to the challenge. This side story continues. In the halls, on the track, playing games, and finally leaving school where a non-legal Cha greets him. Jin studies with Igris before going out and thinking that he knows he's just a student who just finished his CSATs. But are his clothes too simple? Seeing a jacketed mannequin, he uses his power to slip it on, which gets Tusk's compliments. Stopping on the street and counting down, he turns around saying, "Hey," which shocks Cha, who tells him it feels like he's got eyes on his back. Cha says she heard he got really good grades and asks why he would go to that university, and Jin answers that because of the amount of scholarship money he's getting and he'll get to go overseas. Plus, there's someone he wants to meet. Cha asks if it's a woman, but Jin just says, who knows? After blowing smoke, she asks if he remembers their promise for him to answer all her questions if he beats him at running, and Jin affirms. Cha makes a bet to see who can reach the tree first, which prompts Jin to ask what she's so curious about. She answers everything, like what some of the thoughts he has are, and whether the person he wants to meet in the university is a man or a woman, and whether they've met sometime other than on the competition day. Jin freezes before smirking it off, while Cha takes off her scarf and puts it on him, telling him that if he in fact likes her, to stay here and don't move. Cha runs off as Jin Woo's army antagonizes him. As she runs to the tree, all of their memories play through Jin Woo's head. Touching the tree, she says it's her win, and Jin scratches his face. Telling all of his shadows to close their eyes, Jin walks to Cha before embracing her. This side story continues. In the world of rest, a dragon greets Tusk along with a high orc, and Tusk responds by saying that good morning is what he wants to say. But in the world within the shadows, there is no day and night. Baru approaches Tusk while keeking as Tusk guesses it is complete. Offering the hoodie, Tusk excitedly says it looks exactly like the hooded jacket that their liege wore a while ago. He asks how he should thank Commander Beru, but the ant only questions how he could ignore Tusk's heart for wanting to be like their liege. Tusk says he likes it so much that he wants to make it mandatory for all magic soldiers to wear it. Beru laughs, but points out that it would be better to make the marble into a staff compared to holding it in his hand. Tusk affirms that it's a great idea, and since the beard dwarves are the best artisans, he'll entrust them with the making of the staff. This is the world of rest, because it's so wide you can't see its end, and there are more than 10 million soldiers living here. Everyone in the world helps each other. The soldiers are strongly connected to their liege's mind, and the stronger their liege's power grows, the more they'll think like their liege, which means the soldiers that previously only wanted destruction are now slowly learning the ways of being human. The various emotions that humans have. It was a really new and refreshing experience for them as their empty hearts began to be filled with something new. Soldiers are sleeping, soldiers are training, soldiers that are chatting away, and even soldiers that would grab each other's neck while raising their voices. All of them gain their own personalities and live in this world. He thanks their liege for inviting him into a new world that he couldn't have imagined. Tusk notes that it's finally completed and calls the staff cool, while other orcs applaud as a dwarf says that he thinks the word cool suits the robe that he's wearing more than it does this staff. Tusk asks the Titans what they're doing, to which he's told that Belion asked them to be here. Tusk notes that there are magic soldiers among the new soldiers, and to think they're using magic with such big bodies. What a waste of their size. Wait, but Tusk shouldn't be saying this. He broadcasts that he will now tell them all about what he did during the first fight between their great liege and the Dragon Emperor, and what he has done in the dimensional crack. Igris asks what he's doing fooling around, but Tusk questions how dare he claim he is fooling around when he's wearing the same robe as their liege. He once more asks who dares say that before telling Ygritte he loves him. Ygritte says he's thankful for the heartfelt words, but Tusk asks why he's come to look for him, to which Ygritte says that it's going to start soon, so he thinks that all the general rank soldiers who are serving their league by his side should be cheering him on. Looking out the window, Tusk yells and questions if it's finally time for their liege to meet Ms. Hay-in. Tusk cries while the other shadows cheer as Ygritte watches thoughtfully. This side story continues. This is the inside of an imaginary space made using the power of his liege. It is where Ygritte first met him. His mission was to test him, who entered that place. His liege wanted to see if he was a human that was worthy of becoming his vessel. Ygritte knew that was the last order his liege gave to him. At the time, he guessed that would be his farewell with his liege. And Ygritte thought that if his liege, who lost interest in the battlefield after forgiving the rulers, had shown such interest in mere humans, then there must be a good reason for it. His liege's orders are absolute. He won't ask nor discourage his intentions. His only answer to him would be that he'll follow his orders. That was all he could do. After his original power had been sealed, he stood alone in the imaginary space to test his worthiness. Ygritte thinks that this appearance of his is what he looked like before he met his liege when he was alive. He knows the world of rest possesses infinite authority, but to think this sensation feels exactly like it did back then. The designer created such an exquisite place using his liege's power. This kind of elaborate detail is probably here to slowly create a physical body that can take in his liege's power. Ygritte wonders if he's already here, as he can sense his presence behind the door. Come quickly. I'm waiting for you in this place. Feeling a little too arrogant and wondering if he looks a little disrespectful, Ygritte thinks that that human he'll be testing from now on possesses the consciousness of his liege, so to be sitting on the throne in front of his liege is a little extra. Wondering where he should stand as the throne room lights up and Jin walks in, Ygritte hides behind a pillar, curious if that's the man who's been chosen by his liege. This side story continues. Even if this wasn't the last mission that was entrusted to Ygritte, he has no intention of not giving his all to this fight. If Ygritte thinks he's unworthy, he'll die by his hands. All right, he'll test him, he'll see if he's worthy of this throne, and so that was how he started fighting him. But the results were disappointing. He didn't possess the talent nor the abilities to overwhelm his power when he was alive. He was busy just dodging the sword. But is he intending on fighting Ygritte with his bare fists? He sure is courageous for a mere human. Ygritte likes that his eyes are full of fighting spirit, but does he possess the necessary abilities? Even though he doesn't have the physical body that's suited for his liege, he commends him for his fighting spirit. Disappointing. How disappointing. How can someone so weak be worthy of becoming his liege's vessel? Give up, powerless human. He doesn't deserve to sit on that throne. Ygritte will now decapitate him for an honorable death. He was relieved at the first and last failure of his liege, because if he wasn't worthy of inheriting his liege's power, then his liege would be able to stay as his liege for a longer time. He'll cut his head off painlessly in an instant, but he couldn't help but be surprised. More than the fact that he stopped his sword, it was that he had not given up on life even in that situation. As Jin stabbed him in the eye, he wondered if that was how he loses. Ah, it's faint, but those eyes. He thinks they resemble his liege's, the strength that he had and the strength that Ygritte had. Ygritte, who was the examiner, definitely had stats that were several times higher than his. Yes, he had lost. Was it because he let his guard down, or was this a miracle created by his tenacity that doesn't know how to give up? Ygritte doesn't know if he's supposed to be happy at the correct decision made by his liege. That was how Ygritte lost to him, and he cherished him. Ygritte found himself frequently being thankful at the goodwill he felt from him. He was his master, friend, and comrade. He fought a lot of battles with him. Despite realizing that as Ygritte's loyalty to him grew deeper, he started to miss his previous master less. He ended up accepting him as his new liege. This side story continues.